story. For a closer look at Tim Geithner's role in AIG's financial dealings, we're joined now by former federal prosecutor Fred Tecce. He has handled numerous SEC cases. He's also defended publicly traded companies over disclosure issues. He's now with McShay. Tecce's joining us from Philadelphia today. So, Fred, we heard here sort of the push back and forth between the New York Fed and AIG. Ultimately, couldn't AIG have decided to come out and disclose this information anyway?
Well, they could have, Julie, but I mean, that's kind of like, you know, they're dealing with the New York Fed. They're getting money from them for the bailout. And for the Fed to say that, you know, we didn't tell them they didn't have to, I mean, that's like borrowing money from a mafia don. And then when the guy says, I think you ought to pay me back, you don't take it as a threat. I mean, they weren't really given a lot of choice in the matter. And quite frankly, AIG knew that this was an issue. The draft of the disclosure, which had been put together by AIG, talks about the 100 cents on the dollar payment to entities such as Goldman, and it talks about the Meridian Lane $52 billion deal, and it was struck out. And I watched the secretary in front of Congress arguing about how critical it was that this be done, and it had to have been done, and if they hadn't done it, the entire thing would have collapsed. Well, if that's true, then why didn't you disclose it? As a prosecutor, I'm always kind of wary about people who take stuff out that should be disclosed. And interestingly, the SEC 6 days later went back to AIG and said, we want a Schedule A, and we want to know about these swaps. And in fact, AIG's general counsel or deputy general counsel in one of these emails says, we got conflicting demands. The SEC saying they want to see this, and the New York Fed's telling us not to do it. We don't know what to do here.
Well, why do you think the New York Fed did decide to not disclose it? I mean, when I talked to John Coffey last hour, I said, is it just a matter of self-preservation here?
You know what? I mean, I always kind of bristle when I see people saying that they want a non-disclosure. And as a prosecutor, you know that motive is never an element of any crime. And I'm not saying that there's a crime here. But given the political firestorm and the maelstrom that was going on in late November and in late 2008, I think, as some of your other people said, it would have been political suicide to announce that this money was basically a pass-through, 100 cents on the dollar to Goldman Sachs and allegations about their role in all of this, and to society, these banks, these overseas banks. I mean, so that American taxpayer dollars are being given to these guys to pay swaps back at 100% on the dollar. Why weren't they forced to take a haircut and negotiate like a lot of other people?
Fred, Section 10b-5 Securities Act, how do you define materiality?
Well, you know, it's interesting. I mean, what Section 10 of the Securities Act requires that information that's material be disclosed. And generally, the kind of the cocktail party definition, and quite frankly, sometimes the legal definition is that materiality is information upon which a reasonable investor would have relied in making a determination as to whether or not to purchase a share of AIG stock or sell a share that they had in their possession.